Starting in just a minute here. First, we're going to go to a video interview here. Let me introduce our special guest here today, Warren Redlich, who has this really great new book out. I don't know how new it is. I'll ask him in just a moment here. It's called Fair DUI, Stay Safe in a World Gone Mad, M-A-D-D, and yes, the world has gone mad. I've talked about this for years, and every time I bring it up, I know that my SiriusXM radio producers, they go, or they get all cringy and start going, don't talk about mad. Don't talk about drunk driving. You can't go there. This is taboo. This is an issue. Why? Why is it? As Lou Rockwell has pointed out back in 2001 and again in 2006 and then again last year, driving under the influence is a crime that people are accused of and then convicted of. And it's a victimless crime usually. You know, when you kill someone or you maim someone and you're intoxicated, well, then there's vehicular homicide or manslaughter, and there's destruction of private property. An actual crime has been committed. The law needs to be brought to bear. When you are convicted of driving under the influence because you had 3 glasses of wine with your dinner, and you're driving home with your darling bride, or she's driving you home, and she's had 3 glasses of wine, and you get pulled over by some gung-ho cop who is on a mission to stop as many people like you and bring them to jail as they can. What crime have you committed? You know, this is an issue of individual and personal liberty here that I don't think has been properly defended either by conservatives or by libertarians. Certainly not by old classical liberals here. What crime, what offense have you actually committed? And there isn't an awful lot of action against this because the Mothers Against Drunk Drivers and other groups are so powerful, and they have tabooed the issue to make it almost seem as though anyone that ever drinks anything and gets behind the wheel of a car is an accident waiting to happen. Well, I would suggest to you the law of averages and probability says that anyone, regardless of if they drank a glass of wine or a Dr. Pepper, that gets behind the wheel of a car is an accident waiting to happen. So, without further ado, our guest is Warren Redlich with the book Fair DUI, and he's on the Skype chat with us here today. Hello, Warren. Thanks for joining us. Oh, I got to bring him up.
How's that?
That's good. We got you.
Okay.
So, why did you write the book Fair DUI?
I'm a drunk driving defense lawyer, and it was getting to that I kept seeing so many cases. Primarily, the big thing is people make mistakes. They get arrested, and they make a decision when they get pulled over. They do all the wrong things. So a big chunk of the book is how you really should handle a DUI stop, a traffic stop, a checkpoint. But part of it was I really don't agree with the laws themselves. I think we could do a lot better. If we want to make our roads safer, we can do a lot better than what we're doing.
Is it fair to say, as I just characterized, that DUI laws currently prosecute people that, for the most part, when someone is pulled over for DUI and then is convicted, DUI, DWI, depending on which state it is, that they actually haven't committed any physical damage to any property, any actual crime, other than they were in violation of what the state says they can have in their body?
Yes, that's absolutely correct. In fact, the overwhelming majority of my cases are person gets pulled over in a traffic stop, person gets stopped in a checkpoint. Even when cases when there's an accident, most of those cases are when they injure themselves or they damage their own car and they don't hurt anyone else.
One of the things that you bring up in the book, and there's chapters, it's almost like okay, well, let's walk through your evening.
Yes.
And you keep making the point that, okay, first of all, don't drink and drive. So that's number one. But if you get to step number 2, oh, you're out somewhere and you have had something, you've had a drink. The dinner date that I described, you had a couple glasses of wine. There are some tips that you give in the book that you can pass on to listeners. And folks, I think that I hope that all of you read the book and get a copy of it. Warren has signed all the copies. He signed mine right there. He signed yours as well. There's some things that you can do that you need to know before you actually get behind the wheel. Just give us an example.
Well, I mean, first thing obviously is it's when I say don't drink and drive, it's not I think it's wrong morally to drink and drive. Certainly if you drink too much and drive, that's morally wrong. But the problem is people who think, well, I only had one or two. You said 3 glasses of wine. I had a client who had 2 glasses of wine over 4 hours, and when they took him to the police station, he blew a 0.16. Now, fortunately for him, the jury said not guilty. But, the idea that I only had 1 drink, so it's okay for me to cooperate, what people don't realize is the techniques and devices that the police use to test you, measure you, they're not accurate.
Right.
Even the blood tests have flaws. Even if they draw your blood and take it to the lab, it has flaws. So I think the first thing people need to realize is no drinks. Not 1 drink.
Not one
Don't
drink.
have a single drink and drive a car. Not because it's wrong, but to keep yourself safe.
And so let's go to the second phase. So you disobeyed this. You had the 3 glasses of wine. You're in the car, and now you go, woo. So the police officer said, well, you crossed a yellow line, or I didn't see your turn signal, whatever the case is. The first order of business here, and I don't want to give away all the contents of the book, but the first order of business here is to
shut up.
I was waiting for you to finish this.
I got this little toy for you. I'm working on business cards, and this is what you show the police officer.
I remain silent, no searches. I want my lawyer.
And my business card's on the other side. But one of the problems that we have is the U.S. Supreme Court in a recent decision said you have to affirmatively assert your right to remain silent. So people think that means you have to say, I'm remaining silent, but then you just spoke. And one of the problems is the police officer is going to claim that your speech was slurred.
Right.
Which is nonsense, and I'll explain that in a minute. But if you use a card like this, which again I'm working on, this is not the final version, if you use that card, you have now affirmatively asserted your right to remain silent without having to be not silent. It's it's a catch-22.
And then the officer, okay, what happens then? What does in a typical case, when I go, the officer then will do?
Well, there's no typical. Every police officer is different. It depends on the circumstances of why you were stopped.
Okay.
If, for example, you're at a checkpoint, I would say don't even roll down your window. Hold that up to the glass. Maybe hold your license and registration up to the glass. If they insist on you rolling, obviously if they get to the point where they're going to smash in your window, then roll down the window.
Right.
The whole point is to demonstrate that you're not consenting to anything. And the reason they want you to roll down the window is so they can smell inside your car, which is a search. They want to smell if they can smell alcohol in your breath. The case, it's Michigan versus Sitz, is the Supreme Court case that says checkpoints are okay. It says that it's okay for police to conduct checkpoints. It doesn't say you have to cooperate with them. Obviously you have to stop.
Right.
But do you have to roll down your window at a checkpoint? That's an affirmative duty on you to give up a search. I don't think you're required to roll down your window under any case law. So if you can communicate effectively with the police officer by slapping this up against the window and tell them I'm not going to talk and I'm not going to consent to any searches, and then you show them your license and registration if you have to. Some police officers won't take it well and they'll threaten to smash your window in or drag you out of the car, arrest you, whatever. But they have to have a valid reason for arrest. And asserting your constitutional rights is not a crime. Yet.
They'll get to that. Okay, so we've gone to the stop, and we've held our card up, and then they're saying, well, here in Louisiana and in Texas, we have these must-comply laws. If you go to one of these rolling stops and you refuse, what they will do is they'll have a judge who's sitting in a car, and they will say, well, I'm going to get a search warrant right now. And not only am I going to get you out of that car, I'm also going to strap you to a gurney, and I'm going to get I'm going to get a vial of your blood, and I'm going to test your BAC, your blood alcohol content. This is another thing that you cover in the book, that don't trust their methodology, right?
Right. No. I mean, the devices they use to measure your blood alcohol content are very badly flawed. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. I think part of it is, and towards the end of the book, I talked about what you need to do after you're released. They have sort of a catch and release program. They catch you, they write you your tickets, and then they release you. So what's amazing to me is how many people who should know better don't do what they should do. A prime example of this is doctors.
Right.
Okay? Doctors should know better. When they release you, you should immediately go to a medical facility and get your blood drawn and get your own blood test. Obviously, if you think you're hammered, that's one thing. But this book isn't written for the people who are driving hammered. This book is written for the people who've had a couple of drinks. They think it's their God-given right to drink and drive, right? But they're not drinking to the point of excess. They believe that they're legal. They're doing what's right, but they don't trust. They shouldn't trust the system. They shouldn't trust the system that's in play. And a lot of the book goes through a lot of common mistakes that they make and a lot of flaws in the system. That's the idea. How do you protect yourself?
And since the book has come out, and since you can get it at Amazon, we're going to sell it at the Founders Trading Post with your John Hancock on it. Since it's come out, have you encountered anyone that's with MAD that has said, hey, what are you doing there, Redlich? You better watch it there, buddy. You better watch your mailbox.
A little bit. I have gotten a little bit of, I created a Facebook page and a website called fairdui.org and a Facebook page called Fair DUI. And I occasionally post comments on news articles that I see. I track news stories about MAD. And if I see a story about MAD, I'll post a comment. There was a story about, I think it was Alaska, the MAD chapter had to shut down because they didn't have enough money. Well, what people don't realize is MAD is a terrible charity. If you go to Charity Navigator and you look up MAD, they have the worst rating you can have. They are very inefficient. They spend the money on administration. They don't spend it on programs. They're all over the map in things that they support. They're talking to kids about premarital sex. What does that have to do with Mothers Against Drunk Driving? They've got all these programs going on that don't relate to the ultimate issue. And people don't know this. The founder of MAD left in disgust over what it had become. Candy Lightner. Look up, Google Candy Lightner.
Candy Lightner.
See her story.
Yeah, I've heard the story before. Final question for Warren Redlich, who is our guest here on Founders TV here today. And you'll be on the radio show tomorrow. I can't wait for the radio audience to hear these things, because every time I talk about this, my phone line goes. That's why I picked Friday. I thought, well, we're going into the weekend. People are going to take their wives out. They're going to go have a little dinner tonight, and some of them probably, inevitably, will encounter the police. One of the things, though, that you mentioned in the book, and you mentioned when we first started our interview here today, is that these DUI laws don't make the streets any safer. Now, I've actually looked this up, and according to AAA, the amount of vehicular homicides per year, while they have maybe decreased marginally, incrementally, as a result of improvements in airbags and seatbelts and stuff, there's no evidence to suggest that vehicular homicides from drunk drivers, really drunk drivers, have actually gone down since these arcane and these Byzantine DUI laws have been enacted. Number one, is that borne out? Is that your experience as well? And number two, what would make the streets safer? Because you say, well, this doesn't really make the streets safer. What do you think actually would make or does make the streets safer?
Sure. Well, first of all, there's a lot of evidence that I think part of the problem is they've driven the number down. It used to be 0.10. First of all, there used to be no number. Then it was 0.10 blood alcohol content. Now they pushed it to 0.08. They're trying to push it to 0.05. And then really, ultimately, they want to make it 0.02 or lower.
Right.
But the evidence is pretty clear that once you get below 0.10, you're really not you're not seeing a lot of deaths on the road from drivers who are below 0.10. And even really below 0.15. And of course, keeping in mind that those measurements aren't reliable in the first place. But the focus on low-level offenders takes away from the hardcore offenders, who are the ones who are really causing more problems. The person who's going out drinking heavily and driving every night is a much bigger concern than the guy who has a couple glasses of wine every Friday night.
Right.
And the MADs, keep in mind, here's the thing about MAD. Their focus is to drive as many people as possible to plead guilty to something and go into the programs, because MAD makes money off the programs. You plead guilty, you go to these victim impact panel. Oh. $35 goes to MAD. 1,000 people a year in one particular court get a DWI, that's $35,000 to MAD. So that's something people don't think about. But how to make the roads safer? First of all, let me just posit an example. You take your town, whatever town you live in, and you say, we've got, on a given night, we've got one cop on the road who's doing DUI patrols, and he's probably going to get one drunk a night. That's maybe two. Let's call it 1 or 2 drunks a night. Take the same money, you could put 2 guys out in shuttle buses, have them drive around to the local bars, and call into the bartender, walk in and say, hey, whoever you think shouldn't be driving home, send them out, I'll drive them home for free. Those guys will take 100 people off the road in a night. and they'll cost the same money or less than it costs for one cop with all the stuff that goes in that car. And I'm not down on cops. I'm just saying let's have our police officers do what they should be doing, which is combating violent crime, combating things that need to be combated,
Right.
and not go after regular people who are doing regular stuff. The same things that cops and prosecutors and judges do.
Yeah, we have a program here in Southeast Louisiana started by a woman named Ashley. It's called Ashley's Angels. And even though they're not the cops will, if you ask, they will call Ashley's Angels for you. But the bartenders all have a little card, kind of like your card, that says, have you been drinking? Don't drive. Call Ashley's Angels. You leave your car there. They come and get you. They bring you home. And then if you don't have a ride to get back to your car the next day, they'll actually send someone to come and get you and bring you back to your car. It's all run on donations. People donate. It's optional whether or not you want to pay $150 to Ashley's Angels for picking you up. $150 is a bargain compared to $5,000 in DUI.
Yes, no, and I've heard estimates as high as $10,000 of the total cost to somebody of a DUI. There's all kinds of. This is another thing. If I have time, another thing people should be aware of. There's a lot of consequences to a DUI that people don't think about. Like maybe you won't be able to get into Canada, and you think, well, I don't usually go to Canada. I don't think I'm going to Canada. 20 years from now, you've got a job, and they're having a conference in Toronto, and you don't remember this DUI incident, and you fly up to Toronto, and you get to the airport, and they say, sorry, you can't come in. And now you've got to explain to your company why you couldn't come to the conference. And there's all kinds of consequences. You apply for a job, you don't get it, you don't know why. Maybe it was that DUI on your record. I just talked to somebody who was trying to become a social worker. 3 years of study. They were getting ready, and they said, oh, we just found you have a DUI on your record. You can't be a social worker. But you just spent 3 years studying to do it. So, all kinds of consequences people need to be ready for.
Okay, this Warren Redlich. The book is Fair DUI.
Fair DUI, stay safe and sane in a world gone mad.
And a world gone mad. Warren, thank you for your time. Thanks for the book, too. It's an act of courage and public service on your part, my friend. Thank you very much. And we'll see you tomorrow on the radio.
Great. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. That's Warren Redlich there, folks. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, so we can now move to our the other part of our program here today, which is a couple of other things to discuss here. And I think I just have enough time to get into the month of August, written by Gracie Howard. And by the way, get this book in the Founders Trading Post at MikeChurch.com, signed by Warren Redlich. And it's a great book. I've read it cover to cover. It's got great information in it, lots of stuff that I didn't know, but I know it now. And you'll be empowered with the information, too. So get it. Hey, it's a great gift for a birthday present. You're going to a birthday party, and you know there's going to be people drinking and then driving. Give this out as a gift to the birthday girl or boy.